And I think that was like the most hardest part. Hi guys, so first off we want to apologize for not posting in a while. This video is a little different than what we usually post. We wanted to be more open with you guys. Jakari's on deployment, so it's just going to be me in this video. And by the title you can see I'm going to share our ectopic pregnancy story. Before I get into that, I just want to share a little history about us for those who are new to this channel. So my husband Jakari, he's a Navy sailor, he's 24 years old, and he is a part-time student majoring in accounting. And I'm Mercaria, his wife. I'm 22, I work at our local middle school as an avid tutor. I'm a full-time student at Liberty University studying psychology. So there's a few reasons I wanted to share this story. First, I wanted to bring more awareness to this topic and to miscarriages. Then I hope that sharing my story could, relate to someone if they watch this video and know that they're not alone, and just to get some clarity about what they're probably experiencing right now. Lastly, I wanted to share this video just so people could see what we were going through and know that we're okay, and we just love you guys and we love you guys' support. So a little backstory, November 2019, I stopped taking Jolessa. I started tracking my periods, tracking my ovulation, and we would baby dance during the window cycles. For those of you that don't know what baby dance mean, it just means like doing the deed, making the baby, trying to make a baby at least. And so we were doing that, and November came around, I had a period. December came around, I had a period. January came around, I had a period. And those of you who know, after your period, then 2 weeks later, like around near 2 weeks later, you ovulate. So we started baby dancing around my ovulation time, and week 3 is when implantation happens, and I felt the implantation immediately. Like one day I was just cramping so hard and I was like, I'm pregnant. Like I knew from that very moment, like my body just changed after that day. After that day I had back pain. I never have back pain. I was having cramps. Like for me, my period, I don't ever usually have cramps when I have a period, and I just immediately got nausea, and I never had nausea. Like some people who have PMS symptoms, they have nausea and back pain. For me, I just have like food cravings and those little cramps, but this time, like the cramps at even week 3 were so extreme. And since I've never been pregnant before in my life, I thought, this is normal, is looking stuff up, like it's normal to have cramps, it's normal to have back pain. I just didn't know the difference, like what severe and what normal was, because I've never been pregnant before. And then some people, when I watch YouTube, they were like, oh yeah, they had severe pain and now they're like 7 months pregnant, or they just had a baby. And I'm like, okay, like seems normal. And so week 4 comes around, and during week 4, you usually have your period. And so I took a pregnancy test the day before my period was supposed to come. That pregnancy test came out negative, but I knew like in my heart that I was pregnant. Like I just felt it, my body felt it. Like you could not tell me I wasn't pregnant. I was telling my husband, and he was like, I'm not gonna believe you until I see a positive pregnancy test. And I'm like, okay, like you're gonna see. And then I asked him, when I do get a positive pregnancy test, do you want me to just show you the results, or do you want me to surprise you? And of course my husband said surprise me. He loves surprises. And so I was like, okay, I'll surprise you. And during this time, I'm still feeling like cramps. By week 4, I had like insomnia, like I couldn't sleep, my back hurt, like I was having cramps mostly like on the right side, and so I mostly slept on my left side, even though like my favorite position to sleep is like on my right side. Like I couldn't sleep on my back. I never felt that pain before. I don't even know how to describe it at this point. Like if it wasn't sharp pain, it just felt like constant dull pain or cramping. And I was just like, I guess this is normal, like that's what the internet said, so I didn't ever question it. 3 days, I think 3 days after my period, I decided to take another pregnancy test. So this is a Thursday morning, yeah, so Thursday morning I decide to take a pregnancy test and it comes out positive. And so now I'm excited. My husband's on duty and I'm just like, oh, I have this whole evening to plan like a surprise for him because he won't be coming home until the next day, Friday morning. I made this little onesie that says baby Stallings coming soon 2020. So I did record that video. I didn't really say anything in the video because honestly I was in shock. I didn't know how to feel. Like I just had my first positive pregnancy test in my life. I was like, wow, it was a whole different world. So that video will be right here. You guys can see.
My baby having a baby.
Oh man, really?
Excited.
I'm so excited, and I just can't.
So as you can see, my husband was so excited. He just was head over heels. And I was happy, we were both happy. That same day, we ended up going to the doctor's office to confirm that, you know, I was pregnant. They confirmed it with a urine sample and a blood sample. That day, I was 4 weeks and 5 days. Week 5, day 3, I'm, you know, doing my normal routine. I go to work, come home. I was cleaning up. We were gonna have dinner at a friend's house. So they live right next door to us, so we just go to their house. We're having dinner. We just got done eating. We're all relaxing, watching a movie. My husband, my friend's husband, they just kind of like fall asleep on the couch. So we're just talking, and I go to the restroom, and when I go to the restroom, when I wipe, there's just like bright red blood. And so this is the first time I spotted this whole time. I was just like, oh my goodness, like I'm spotting. Like I immediately was like, I hope I'm not having a miscarriage. Like I just started praying right then and there, like in her restroom. And then I just, you know, wipe, flush the toilet, go to the living room. And since she's 7 months pregnant, she's been through all this already. So I just like tell her like, hey, I'm spotting. Did you spot when you were 5 weeks? And she was just like, no, not really, like barely, just like a little light pink thing on the napkin. And she was like, how much is it? And I was like, well, it's more than that, but let me go back. So I go back in her restroom, I wipe again, I take a picture of the toilet paper, and then I come back out and I show her the picture. And she was like, oh yeah, like that's a lot more than what I spotted with, and mine wasn't like that bright red. And so she was like, here, let me like send it to my doctor and see what she thinks. And so she sends it to her doctor, and her doctor was like, it could be anything. The best thing your friend can do is go to the emergency room and, you know, just get a peace of mind, and they'll give her a follow-up appointment. And so I'm like, okay. So we're just like sitting there. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wake my husband up and I'll like text you. So I waked Yakari up and I said like, hey, like it's time to go home, you're asleep, let's just go home. So we go home first because we live right next door. We get our keys, we change, we get ready to go to the emergency room. It's like 6:30 in the evening now. So we get to the emergency room and the doctor, he's like checking me in, just like getting a little emotional at this point because now I have to tell this stranger, this is my first time pregnancy, I'm spotting. take my blood, I give a urine sample, and they're like, yes, you're pregnant, so we're gonna do a vaginal ultrasound. So they do a vaginal ultrasound, and the doctor's like, I see a sac, but I don't see a yolk. But he was like, this could just be very early. You say you're only 5 weeks in a couple days. And then he said my HGC levels were a little low, so it matches what he's seeing in the ultrasound. He was like, but we're gonna schedule you an appointment with the high-risk gynecologist, and they'll give you a call and make an appointment. The ER tells me if I bleed more or feel any more uncomfortable, just come back and they'll reassess me. But for now, just wait until I have my appointment with the gynecologist. So that was Tuesday night. Wednesday, I just stayed home, didn't do much, stayed in bed. I was just spotting on and off a little bit, not anything to soak a pad, just like light bleeding. So on Wednesday, after the ER visit, the gynecologist nurse calls me to confirm my appointment. She tells me to come in Friday, which was just 3 days after my ER visit. She says that gives it a little bit more time for my HGC level to either drop or rise, and they can compare them, and they'll give me another ultrasound. And she also tells me do not eat or drink the night before my appointment, just because the doctor ordered so. Sorry if I've been saying HGC, I mean HCG levels. It's basically the hormone levels that the embryo produces when it implants. Friday comes around February 28th, so right before COVID was, about to spring up into the atmosphere. Don't go to work because I'm like, I have this 9 a.m. appointment. I have to go give blood and then come back at 11 o'clock for them to tell me my results and to do the vaginal ultrasound. At my 11 o'clock appointment, I go, the nurse comes, she brings me into the little waiting room, she gives me a gown and she says, change it to this, and then me and the doctor will be back in here. I change into the little gown, the doctor comes in, we go over my ER visit. He asked me how I'm feeling today, and I just told him, I've been having these cramps on the right side, I've been having back pain, and I had the spotting on Tuesday, a little bit on Wednesday. He was like, nothing after that, and I was like, no, nothing after that. He did tell me that my HCG levels did drop from the ER visit, so that was concerning, and he told me that we would do a vaginal ultrasound just so he can get a better look of what was happening in there. He does the ultrasound, the nurse is in the room, and he's going on the screen and he's just saying he doesn't see anything, and he asks me, what did they tell you at the ER? At the ER they told me they seen a sac but they didn't see a yolk, and he was just like, well, these little computers up here are finicky, so I'm gonna send you down to radiology, and they're gonna use their big fancy machine and get some better imaging, and then he was like, we'll go from there. That nurse there, she gives me a gown and she tells me to change, and she's just a tech, so she just does like the imaging. I don't really see what's on the screen since she's not a doctor. She can't really tell me like what she sees, so she's just doing stuff and moving it around. She's telling me she's taking pictures and videos on each side of my ovaries, and at this point I'm in so much pain. Like, I just start crying because it was such a painful process for her to just keep moving the machine they put in you vaginally around to get, those images. It was just so painful. When she's done, I change, I go back upstairs, and the doctor, he tells me with all the videos they took, with all the images, he was like, I just don't see anything in your uterus. For the machine that they use, like, just really not common, so I can give you 3 options. He said, option 1, which he thinks is happening, is that the embryo has implanted in my fallopian tube, and we can have surgery to go in there and check and take it out, but surgery would be the only way to know if it's in my tube or not. He said option 2, I can have this shot, which basically makes me have a miscarriage. Option 3, this is Friday, I could go home, come back Monday, and they'll retest me, take my blood, do a vaginal ultrasound, and see did the embryo pop up or not. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'll take option 3. And then the doctor was like, well, I don't comfortable letting you go home without taking option 2 or taking option 1. He was like, because it's Friday and if you go home today, this embryo ruptures in your tube, you could have eternal bleeding. I'm just like, okay, well, I'll just take option 1 because I don't want the medicine. And he was like, okay, well, let me tell you why I think it's in your tube and what the surgery would entail. And he was like, because I looked over your medical records and you did have an appendix removal in 2013. I think because of the appendix removal caused scar tissue damage to your fallopian tube, which could have caused the embryo to get stuck in your fallopian tube. He was like, because you just have this pain mostly on the right side and in your back, he was like, I think that's where the embryo is at, and that's why we don't see it in a vaginal ultrasound. So he's telling me this and I'm like, yeah, I think like I should just do the surgery. And he's like, okay, well, call your husband, let him know what's going on and see if he can get here because we're gonna have the surgery today. While you call your husband, I'm gonna go process the paperwork. So I leave his office, I call my husband, and at this point, you know, I'm trying to be brave, not emotional, to tell my husband like my appointment didn't go as well as we thought it would go. But I swear Dakari got to the hospital so fast. Like, I swear 15 minutes after I called him, he was there. He meets me on the 2nd floor. So the doctor, you know, calls us back in there. The doctor's explaining everything to Dakari. Dakari's asking him all these questions because, you know, the doctor's telling us that if he takes the embryo out of my tube, most likely he'll have to take my tube out because of the scar damage. We're asking him like, is there a possibility like you can leave the tube in there? And he's just like, things like this happen because of scar damage and because of the extra damage from the surgery. It was like the best thing to do is just take it out because it can result in another ectopic pregnancy. At this point, I'm in his office, I'm crying, I'm emotional. My husband's being brave, he's giving me a hug, the doctor's giving me tissue because like this is my first pregnancy and so he's just telling us, you know, I'll still be able to get pregnant with my other side. It just may be a little bit more challenging than having both tubes, and at 22 years old, you don't ever think your chances are gonna get lower. Sitting there in that appointment was just very emotional. And so the doctor gives us papers to go over the surgery that I'm gonna have. The doctor tells us I'm gonna have a laparoscopy surgery, which basically is gonna remove the embryo and the tube if the embryo is implanted in my tube. He says if not, and if it's in your uterus, then we'll just, you know, sew you back up and just hope that the surgery doesn't cause a miscarriage. The staff for surgery is just ready for us. They give me a gown, they give me these special shoes, they take my vitals, my height, my weight, and we don't even get a chance to call our family members because they're just ready to go. So I'm in the bed, there's nurses, and the nurse is like telling my husband like he has to go back to the other waiting area. My husband just like grabs my hands and prays over me in front of everyone, just to quiet them down, and it was like the best thing I could have asked for in that moment. It was just so beautiful, at least for me. I was so thankful, felt so blessed. So he prays and he leaves, and then just comes and he sticks my hand about 2 or 3 times to give me an IV. Then the anesthesiologist comes and he's on this side of me talking, trying to like tell me about the medication, tell me to sign papers, you know. On this side, they're still trying to stick me in the hand, so then I just become so emotional. I just start crying because someone's talking over here, I'm getting stabbed with a needle on this side. The anesthesiologist is like, is it something I said? And I'm like, no, I just felt overwhelmed. And the guy with the needle, he's like, do you want me to stop? And I'm like, no, can you just stick me in the arm? Because obviously it's not working in my hand. He sticks it in my arm, first try, it works. I just felt so relieved. Then the anesthesiologist, he continues to talk. I signed the paper, and then they all just kind of like disappear. Another nurse who had been watching from the desk, she comes over and she apologizes for me crying, and she asks me like, do you want me to go get your husband? And at this point I'm just still overwhelmed, and I tell her no. So the surgery goes well. Afterwards, once I wake up, they roll me back to the room that they left Dakari in to wait for me. And I'm just kind of waking up out of the anesthesia, a little bit loopy. They just transfer me to the bed that was in there. And I'm just laying down, and they're telling Dakari like, in an hour we're gonna come check on her. If she can drink a full cup of water and walk, we guys can let you go home. So we call my dad, we let him know, and he's just like, he's sad for us and just for the whole situation, but he's thankful that Dakari was there with me and that I'm okay now. That was the only person we had called that night. When the doctors came in for us to see if I was able to walk and drink, I did fine. I was able to just stand up and do the little walk they wanted me to do. I was able to drink the full cup of water. We went home. By the time we got home, I did text my friend who knew I was bleeding, who knew I was coming to this appointment, and let her know what happened and let her know I had the emergency surgery. By the time we got home, like 30 minutes later, they showed up with a cake. It was so sweet of them. They know I love sweet stuff. Anyone who knows me knows that I love desserts. So they got me this nice little ice cream cake. The doctor put me on bed rest for a week, so I pretty much just ate cake and laid in bed the whole time. The third week after my surgery, you know, COVID was on the rise. Shelter in place was almost into effect. So having my husband home during this time was just very helpful, and he was just there for me emotionally, physically. If I wanted to cry, he let me cry. Like, I just couldn't be more thankful to have him. He was just my biggest support through all of this, and we were just able to be vulnerable together and to get through this. We just prayed a lot. You know, I'm still sad, but I'm also hopeful. For me, I've just been such a giver in life. Everyone who knows me knows that I will give and give and give and give more than I take. And so just having the pregnancy just felt like taken away from me in a way. It was just like a very hard thing to go through. And I wouldn't wish anyone to ever go through that. My pregnancy was taken away, my fallopian tube was taken away, and it was just a hard experience to go through. It made us sad, like telling our parents. Dad would tell me I'm just his baby, like I don't have to have kids, just stay the baby forever. And then after this whole ectopic pregnancy, and then talking to my dad, and he was like, wow, like I would have been a grandpa. Like hearing my dad just say that for the first time, it was just so heartbreaking. It just makes you kind of feel like you just disappointed the people around you. And I think that was like the most hardest part, that people felt her pain. So it was really just hard to tell people, and to just hear their reactions. At 22, having a miscarriage was just like the last thing I ever thought, you know, would happen to me. I'm hopeful, and if you have been through something like this, or if you're going through something like this, you can just stay positive and pray. Just have a good support system, and you can get through it. I know you can. I'm not here to end this video with us, but
There's a boy King D.
and your girl Young K, and we hope you have a blessed day.